Let's dive in. This is going to be a meal timing, meal size, and food quality training. This is actually really important training because first off, there's a lot of different information, on social media saying that like, oh my gosh, should like I intermittent fast? Does it matter if I have breakfast? Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Should I eat before like working out? Should I like eat after? Like, is it okay to eat at night? Like, is that the reason why I'm gaining weight? Right? So let's talk about this. So what's going to be covered in this training is, does meal timing matter? Does meal size matter? Quality proteins, quality carbs, quality fats. Okay, so let's dive in. Does meal timing matter? Essentially, what intermittent fasting did was it actually proved wrong the fact that you had to basically eat every 2 hours. Okay, now basically, if anyone knows a bodybuilder in their life, they probably eat like every 2 hours because of the fact is that they try to get in a calorie goal. And their objective is to build as much muscle as possible and then strip away that body fat to then step on stage, right? But that was actually just shown to be wrong in terms of losing fat. Like if you want to lose fat and even gain muscle, okay, it doesn't necessarily matter on what time that you actually eat your food. And what matters most is that if you meet your calorie goal and you meet your protein goal, I will say it again, what matters most, okay, is if you meet your calorie goal and you meet your protein goal, okay? So if you decide to do intermittent fasting, I would recommend doing a 16-hour fast, okay, an 8-hour eating window. So what does that look like? Your fast starts at your last meal. An example, you stop eating at 6 p.m. Your fast starts at 6 p.m. Okay, that was your last meal. So that would mean that your first meal was at 10 a.m. That would equal 16 hours of not eating. And that's when you would go ahead and break your fast. Okay. Now, is there a best way to break your fast with like coffee, or like do I put like grass-fed butter in my coffee because does that boost my metabolism? Guys, the answer is like okay, there is some research that like caffeine does say that it increases your metabolism, but I would rather have you guys have a whole food meal the start of the day. And as you guys know, that is mostly going to be protein and fat. Okay, try to not have as many carbs for breakfast if you're someone that doesn't necessarily digest carbs the best way. So, in other words, if you're an endomorph, so if you're someone that looks at food and you gain weight and you hold that weight and you know that carbs make you lethargic, you're probably going to have a better breakfast of high fat and high protein. Contrary to that, if you're someone that can just utilize carbs like myself and it just goes right through you, totally okay to have, English muffins or Dave Killer's bread or Kodiak cake protein waffles or rice cake, something like that in the morning on the side. But what I'd recommend is always at least having protein and some fat to start your day, okay? And then depending on your body type and depending on your energy, that's when you decide if you're going to have more carbs or less carbs, okay? So is intermittent fasting optimal for fat loss? The answer is no, okay? But it could be a good thing if you're not hungry in the morning. So let's say you wake up and you're not hungry, then intermittent fasting, you're probably actually doing it anyways, right? Also, if you're really busy in the morning and you feel really rushed, sometimes it's just easier not to eat, right? And then you'd wait for that, you'd wait for your first meal to break your fast, okay? This is gonna be something that you can have in your toolkit. So in other words, the realistically, what this is going to look like is some days you might intermittent fast and some days you might not. Like on the weekends, if you have morning breakfasts with the family, you might not intermittent fast. But let's say Monday you had just a long list of meetings and man, it's just a crazy day. It might be easier for you to intermittent fast. Have it in your toolkit. But what doesn't change is, I'm going to say it again, reach your calorie goal. Track your calories. Track your protein. That is what's most important. Okay. Carbs and fats, we'll get into it down here below. Okay. Super important. Breakfast, high fats, proteins, less carb. I already kind of mentioned this a little bit. Okay, cool. So what is important when it comes to meal timing? This is when we're going to talk about pre-workout meals and post-workout meals. Now, this is important. The reason why this is important is because if you properly, okay, give yourself the right micronutrients that we find in food before, okay, going to the gym, your likelihood of, well, one, recovering that muscle after you're done training is higher, but the likelihood of you building muscle is higher as well. So for your pre-workout meal, you're always going to focus on getting in carbs and proteins, less fat. Fat is slower digesting, so you want to limit your fats, okay? So generally speaking, you want to have around 20 to 25 grams protein, and then generally around like 50 grams carbs. And so some pre-workout meal options like cream of wheat with peanut butter, like a rice cake with peanut butter, honey, a little pink salt on it. It's an example. It could even just be like one piece of like Dave Cooder's toast, some almond butter, something like that. Something that's just, again, it's going to be protein based as well as carbs. So you can always go ahead and use whey protein too and put it in your cream of wheat, which is a way that you can get to 25 grams protein. Again, limited fat, slow digesting, higher calorie, right? Less benefits than carbs. Carbohydrates are going to be your main fuel source for resistance training. Okay, when digesting carbs, it creates an insulin response. Insulin gets released. That shuttles, gets shuttled into your liver and muscle cells, and then it gets digested as glycogen. Glycogen then turns into ATP, and ATP is the most important fuel source for resistance training. Post-workout, very, very similar, okay? Just notice the difference here. For your pre-workout, you're going to have faster digesting carbs. That's things like cream of wheat, oatmeal, rice cakes, breads, bagels, things like that. Post-workout meal, slower digesting carbs, things like potatoes, brown rice, whole grains, okay? Also, too, for a pre-workout meal, I didn't talk about it, but fruit's also a really good example. Okay. And then dinner, this is where you're probably going to have the biggest meal of the day. This is going to be most of your fat goal, most of your carb goal. Because, again, leading up to your workout, you're, again, prioritizing your carbs and proteins. Okay. And then at night, generally having a slower digesting meal. So, again, with dinner, having more satiating foods that are slower digesting, such as, again, vegetables, potatoes, whole grains, things like that. Casein protein powder is something you can supplement too, which is a slow digesting protein. And really good for optimal for muscle mass. Okay. So ideally, how many meals should you eat? Okay. Well, the optimal amount of meals you should be eating is 4 to 6 meals daily, because this is best for amino acid distribution, which basically means that you are, okay, if you're eating 4 to 6 meals a day, then we need to break up your protein, because, again, the most important thing is tracking your calories and getting in your protein. So you want to make sure that you have enough protein every single time you eat. This is called protein distribution. Okay, this is essentially just spreading out your amino acids throughout your day, which is really optimal for muscle building. Which, by the way, if you want to keep your weight off for good, then muscle building is key. Okay, so I don't recommend having no less than 3 meals. Okay, but again, this might be a toolkit. Again, depending on whether you're intermittent fasting and it's easier because you're really busy to have 2 giant meals, then that's okay. Okay, that is okay. It is a toolkit. Just understand that this is not a one-size-fits-all approach. You need to have all these tools in your toolkit, so therefore you can take them out at your disposal for whatever time allocation you have during that day. Does that make sense? But in terms of muscle, we have found that the optimal is 4 to 6 meals daily, okay? This obviously depends on your calorie goal as well. If your calorie goal is 1,200 calories, then that's smaller meals, right? And depends on your hunger levels, right? So let's say that you're just like, man, like I have a 1,200 calorie goal, and it's like you're telling me to have 300 calories per meal. Dude, I'm starving. Then that would make sense that you'd shorten the amount of meals. It wouldn't be 6 meals, right? At 1,200 calories. It might not even be 4. It might be 3, or it might be 2. Again, knowing this, right? It depends on your goals. Depends on, again, lean on me for that as well, okay? Ask me questions about that, please and thank you, okay? And lastly, too, this is more or less for like hunger. This is called a front load approach and then a back load approach. Again, most of us are going to be doing a back load approach where most of your calories is coming from dinner. Most of us are not going to have a large breakfast unless it's like the weekend, you're going out at a cafe, right? That's what I would say. Lunch is generally moderate calories. So what I'm talking about here, guys, is the amount of calories you're having, okay, per course. Generally, for most of us, the most of the calories we're going to be eating in a day is going to be coming at your dinner, okay? Quality protein, let's just go ahead and run through this really quick. This is going a little bit longer than I expected. Dairy, whey, egg whites, eggs, lean quality meats, grass-fed's best. Soy, C-in microprotein for your plant-based. Quinoa and complementary proteins like beans, rice, lentils. How much protein should you be eating? Around 0.7 grams to 1 gram per pound of your body weight, okay? This is also based on your body fat percentage, okay? So if you're someone that's larger and has a lot of body fat percentage, you're not going to be eating around 1 gram per pound of your body weight. If you're a 300-pound male, you're not going to be eating 300 grams protein. You don't need that much because of how much body fat accumulation you have, okay? So it is going to be based on whether you can adhere to your protein goal, but generally speaking, it's going to be around 0.7 Gs to 1 G per pound of your body weight. Okay. And again, it's based on your body fat percentage for more accuracy. Quality carbs. This is depending on how heavy you're training and how sedentary you are. Okay, how busy you are with work and things like that. So light training, 1 to 2 times a week, around 1 gram per pound of your body weight. Again, this is basically just setting up your macros. So basically saying I'm having X amount of carbs, fats, and proteins in a day that equals my calorie deficit. Okay. Hopefully I got that across, is that the calorie deficit is the reason why you lose weight. Okay. Moderate, about 1.5 Gs to 2 Gs per pound of your body weight. And then the heavy is around 3 grams per pound of your body weight. Okay. This is just one way of setting up your carbohydrate goal. If you're someone that's going for a really a jacked look, an aesthetic look, then this is where we would start to say that carbs and fats can be important. But again, I'm going to say it one more time. For most of us that are wanting to lose weight, calories and protein are most important. Okay, complex carbs, I already talked about this: potatoes, rice, beans, lentils, quinoa, wheat pastas. Processed carbs that are faster digesting: white breads, candies, sugars, sweets, cream of rice, cream of wheat, white pasta, cereal, white rice, and I would say even fruit is sweet as well. Faster digesting pre-workout, slower digesting at night. Like I said, major benefits that carbs are anti-catabolic. What does that mean? Okay, when you digest carbs, insulin gets released. Anti-catabolic means quite literally that if you ingest carbs, you're going to have a decreased chance of losing muscle. So your protein breakdown is not nearly, it's going to be way slower than what's your protein synthesis. So the more you're producing more muscle and you're breaking down less muscle. So therefore, the net difference is that you have a higher ratio of building muscle, and that's what carbohydrates can do for you, okay? They're insulin mediated, which basically says, again, insulin's more anabolic. Quality fats. Fats are very important to have in your diet, okay? These are essential fats. Omega-3s are very important. If you don't get enough fish per se, I would always recommend just, again, supplementing with at least a fish oil. So an EPA supplement, DHA sup, you can get those in pairs. Olive oil, avocado oil, nut seeds, avoid trans fats with long shelf life. So in other words, when you see things in the grocery store and it's on the shelf for a long time, it generally means it's going to have a higher amount of trans fats. Like, why is it sitting there and why is it not going bad, right? Vegetables go bad within like 2 to 3 days. Potatoes go bad, right, in like a month, 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks. Man, my potatoes last long. But okay, quality fats, 0.4 Gs per pound of your body weight, okay? So again, depending on how much you weigh, multiply that by 0.4, and again, that's your fat goal. This is just setting up macros. Anything lower can affect your hormones. So basically, essentially having too much fat sometimes can, again, affect your hormones. But fats is most important because it supports testosterone. Now, keep in mind too, your fat goal and carb goal is going to be very dependent on, again, your energy on when you're having carbs and when you're having fats. If you're someone that says, hey, I have more energy with eating higher fats, a higher fat diet, then yeah, you're probably going to be best on higher fat. Vice versa for carbs. Depends on your body fat percentage, and again, depends on how your body reacts to fats and carbs. Foods that'll keep you full, foods that have high amounts of volume, so more water, foods that are lower in calorie density, essentially like potatoes, so they're light in weight, but they're very filling. Foods that are less tasty, so things that don't necessarily make you want to eat the whole entire box. Like if you've ever been to Crumble Cookies, you want more than one after having one, right? If you ever go to like Krispy Kreme donuts, you have one glazed, you want more than one glazed, because these are hyper palatable foods. And this is why we want to be very strategic on what we're putting inside of our mouth, guys, is because if you're struggling with sugar cravings and you're giving yourself sugar, you're only going to want more sugar. You're not actually getting to the source. So we want to be very selective on what we're putting in our mouth, because of the fact that your brain loves tasty foods. And as soon as you get a little bit of tasty foods, you're going to want more and more and more. Okay, foods that are slower digesting, again, more slow digesting carbs, proteins, foods high in fiber, veggies and fruits are their most filling. Okay, hope this was helpful. On to the next.